The 90s gave us more than just cool music and movies. It gave us cars that turned into legends. Some of these old-timers were true finds, and today we're bringing them back to life. Number 12. Chevrolet Impala SS 1996. Here comes a car that looked like it wore a black cape and carried a deep voice everywhere it went. The Chevrolet Impala SS of 1996. This one did not need fireworks to impress, because its presence alone made people whisper, "Whoa, that's serious." When people first saw it roll up, the vibe was not family taxi. It was more, "Don't mess with me." Now here's the wild twist. This mean machine was not some exotic import. It was built from the same bones as the plain old Caprice that your local police officer or taxi driver might have driven. But Chevrolet decided to crank up the fun, toss in a performance motor, and give it just the right touch of attitude. Suddenly, the car that once looked sleepy turned into a full-on legend, the kind of car kids draw when they doodle their dream rides. What really gave the Impala SS its muscle was the heart under the hood. It carried a 350 cubic inch LT1 V8, the same engine family that powered the Corvette. That alone made fans shout because they could proudly say, "This car has the Corvette motor." It pushed out 260 horsepower and 330 pound-feet of torque, which meant this big sedan could sprint to 60 miles per hour in around 6.5 seconds. Back then, that was enough to make even sports cars nervous at a red light. But the story does not stop with power. To keep all that muscle under control, Chevrolet borrowed tricks from their police package Caprice. That meant heavy-duty suspension, strong brakes, and tough shocks that made the car handle far better than anyone expected from such a long sedan. It was not just about straight-line speed. It could take corners with confidence, too. Think of it as a car that wore a suit, but still knew how to dance. Moving to its looks, the Impala SS had something special going on. Chevrolet stripped away the chrome jewelry, gave it body-colored trim, and added 17-inch aluminum wheels that filled the arches perfectly. The rear spoiler and the bold Impala logo on the C-pillar turned the once grandpa car into something that looked dark, bold, and ready for business. In 1994, it came only in black, but by 1995, you could pick deep cherry red or dark green gray. Even so, the black version kept that Darth Vader nickname alive. Climb into the cabin, and you saw more surprises. Instead of a flat bench seat, the SS had leather buckets with embroidered logos and a center console. In the last year, 1996, the company finally gave it a floor shifter and a tachometer, the kind of details fans had begged for since the start. It was like they saved the best party trick for the final act. The final piece of magic was how it all came together. This was a full-size sedan with room for the family, yet it could dash down the quarter mile in about 15 seconds at 92 miles per hour. Even today, when people see a clean Impala SS, they nod in respect because they know this car was the moment when Chevrolet proved 4 doors could still feel legendary. Number 11. Dodge Viper Art10 1992. And just when you thought the Chevrolet Impala SS brought all the thunder, here comes a car that felt more like a rocket strapped to 4 wheels. The Dodge Viper Art10 of 1992. It did not bother with little luxuries like windows that rolled up or even door handles you could pull from the outside. Instead, Dodge went for something wild, raw, and a little bit crazy, because this car was built for one mission only: pure, thrilling speed. Now, let us talk about what made this Viper so outrageous. Right under that long hood sat a V-shaped 10-cylinder motor, nearly 500 cubic inches big. That heart pumped out 400 horsepower. And when you pressed the gas, the car could run a quarter mile in just over 13 seconds. That was faster than even the mighty Corvette ZR1 at the time, and it sent a clear message that Dodge had built something Americans had never seen before. Moving from the numbers to the feel, every drive in this machine was a full-body experience. The side pipes breathed so close to the doors that people joked you could fry bacon on the sill. The canvas top was more like an afterthought, and the windows zipped in like camping gear. Rain or shine, the Viper asked you to be brave. Yet when that motor came alive and the wind tore across your face, you realize all those missing comforts were nothing compared to the thrill this car delivered. To make all that power usable, Dodge gave the car a 6-speed manual transmission and tough suspension arms that could grip the road better than anyone expected. The brakes were huge discs that stopped the car with authority, while the tires were so wide they looked like rolling steamrollers. The whole package sat on a steel tube frame, wrapped with a plastic body, and even with all that muscle, the car weighed just under 3,500 pounds. Switching to how it felt behind the wheel, the Viper was a surprise in its own way. The steering was light, the clutch was heavy but fair, and the shifter moved smooth. Even though the motor was massive, it behaved kindly, whether turning at 1,000 or 5,000 revolutions per minute. In the city, it could crawl politely, but out on open roads, the Viper showed its true calling, pounding along happily and daring you to hold on. Of course, this car had its quirks too, and that was part of its legend. The low windshield meant you kept ducking your head to see stoplights, and the sport bar behind your seat blocked some views in the mirror. The huge tires tried to chase every ripple in the pavement, and hitting a bump at high speed could give you a sudden jolt sideways. But for fans, those tricky moments only added to the respect the Viper demanded. And just like that, the Dodge Viper RT10 proved why the 90s gave us one of the boldest American legends ever built. Number 10, Chevrolet Camaro Z28 1993. No doubt 90s had already given us enough wild rides. Along comes a car that hit the streets with a fresh wave of energy, the 1993 Chevrolet Camaro Z28. This machine didn't just roll off the line. It carried the banner of a whole new generation of muscle cars and proved that American power was fully back in business. Now, the very first thing to talk about is the heart under that long hood. Chevrolet gave the Z28 a 350 cubic inch LT1 V8, the same technology used in the Corvette of that era. It packed 275 horsepower and 325 pound-feet of torque, numbers that made your head spin in the early 90s. Paired with a 6-speed manual transmission, this combo gave drivers a punch of power with every gear change, and it felt like the engine and gearbox were best friends made for each other. But this Camaro wasn't just about going fast in a straight line. Slide to the way it handled the roads, and you'll find it had wide 245-section tires wrapped around 16-inch wheels, plus a limited slip differential to make sure every bit of power went where it should. Four-wheel disc brakes gave it the stopping strength it needed, because all that speed is fun until you need to slow down for a corner. And speaking of corners, this car stuck to the pavement in a way that reminded people muscle cars were learning new tricks. What also made the Z28 stand out was its shape. Gone were the square, boxy looks of the 80s. Instead, this fourth-generation Camaro came in with smooth lines, quad headlights up front, and a wedge profile that cut through the air far better than its predecessors. It looked modern, fast, and ready to challenge anyone still thinking American cars were only good in a straight line. Jumping back to its performance numbers, this Camaro could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in the mid 5-second range and run the quarter mile in the 13-second bracket. That meant it was not only matching the classic muscle cars of the 60s, but often beating them, which was something drivers of the time had been waiting decades to see. Yet the Camaro wasn't all about muscle flexing. It had some brains too. Thanks to clever gearing and aerodynamic design, it managed to deliver surprisingly strong fuel economy on the highway. Imagine that, a car with the power to burn rubber yet able to sip fuel like it had a sensible side. Of course, it wasn't perfect. The visibility was a challenge. The interior materials felt a little cheap, and ergonomics weren't the best. But none of that mattered once the V8 came alive, because all those little complaints melted away the second the tachometer climbed. And here's the fun twist. This very Camaro also served as the pace car for the Indianapolis 500 that year, cementing its role as a true symbol of speed and performance in the 90s. Number 9, Ford Mustang SVT Cobra R, 1995. And now, shifting gears from the last legend, let's roll right into a machine that shook the Mustang world in the 1990s, the Ford Mustang SVT Cobra R from 1995. This was no ordinary pony. This was Ford's way of saying, if you want fun, you better have a racing license in your pocket. Right from the start, this car told you it was built for the track and not for lazy drives to the grocery store. The first thing that stands out is the mighty heart under that fiberglass hood. Instead of the usual 350 cubic inch V8, Ford stuffed in a bigger 352 cubic inch, 300 horsepower engine. That's the same engine family used in a sport truck, but tuned harder, breathing stronger, and pushing out 365 pound-feet of torque. It was like giving a horse the diet of a weightlifter. Suddenly, all that muscle shows up on command. But raw power is only half of the story, because Ford also made sure this car could actually stay planted. The suspension was stiffened with heavy-duty springs and adjustable dampers, so when you tossed it into corners, it felt steady, almost like it had magnets glued to the road. Add a strut tower brace across the nose, and you got a car that wanted to dance on a racetrack instead of stumble through a parking lot. Another worthy thing is how Ford stripped this car bare like a gym locker. Out went the back seat, out went the radio, out went the air conditioning, even the sound insulation. You sat in simple cloth seats with nothing fancy around you. But that was the point. Every pound gone was another chance for the car to run faster. Think of it like ordering a burger with no cheese, no lettuce, no ketchup, just meat and bread. It may not look pretty, but wow, does it deliver. Brakes were a serious focus too, because what good is going fast if you cannot stop? The Cobra R had big 13-inch front rotors with extra cooling ducts feeding them fresh air through the spots where fog lights normally sat. Step on the pedal, and the car listened immediately. No drama, just strong bite, which made racing laps a whole lot safer and way more fun. Rolling on 17 by 9-inch alloy wheels wrapped in fat performance tires, this Mustang gripped the road like glue. On the skid pad, it pulled nearly 0.9 G, which means cornering felt confident and balanced. Even though the ride was stiff, on smooth pavement it felt surprisingly friendly, like a tough coach who still lets you win a game once in a while. And let's not forget the style cue everyone remembers. The raised hood bulge, that wasn't for looks, it was there because the taller intake needed extra room. It gave the car a mean face. The kind of look that warned Camaros lined up next to it that things were about to get interesting. The Cobra R was made in only 250 examples, all painted crystal white, all waiting for racers to take them seriously. Not every car earned a shot at being called legendary, but this one, stripped down, tuned up, and rare as a unicorn in the suburbs, more than deserves its place in the lineup. Number 8, Buick Riviera, 1997. And rolling smoothly from the track warrior we just saw, let's move into something with more class than a tuxedo at a barbecue. The 1997 Buick Riviera. This coupe was not about chasing lap times. It was about making heads turn every single time it pulled up. When Buick dropped this Riviera, it felt like they secretly snuck a concept car out of the auto show floor and let people buy it. The very first thing to notice is the styling, because nothing else in the 90s looked like this. Long body, fastback roof, and just the right splash of chrome gave it presence. Even compared to high-end imports from Japan, the Riviera stood out with curves that made you look twice. Some cars try to blend in with traffic, but this one looked like it wanted its own red carpet. Now let's talk about what powered this big coupe. Buick gave buyers two flavors of V6. The standard engine made 205 horsepower, smooth and reliable. But if you checked the right box, you got the supercharged version with 240 horsepower and a wave of torque that hit like an extra shot of espresso. Press the gas, and this Riviera went from quiet cruiser to highway rocket, sprinting from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 7 seconds flat. That was personal luxury with a serious kick. Moving from speed to comfort, the Riviera was built to pamper. The cabin could seat 5 adults with ease, and if you went with the front bench, 6 could ride together. The bucket seats were wide and cushy, designed after Buick studied hours of human comfort. Add in the smooth 4-speed automatic, and you had a car that could glide through hours of driving without leaving you tired. Handling was another story worth sharing. While this was not a sports car, the Riviera sat on the same sturdy platform as the Oldsmobile Aurora. That gave it a stiff body, low noise, and surprising stability at high speeds. The steering had variable assist to keep parking light and easy, but on the highway it tightened up for steady tracking. It was the kind of car that made long road trips feel like quick errands. The ride quality matched the mission. With fully independent suspension, it floated over bumps with calm confidence. Even on wavy pavement, the Riviera stayed composed, and when you needed to stop, anti-lock brakes and big discs gave sure control. Buick even offered traction control through a prestige package, perfect for keeping this front-wheel drive coupe steady in slippery conditions. Style cues did not stop at the body. The Riviera carried a clean, quiet interior with plush leather seats, thick carpeting, and available steering wheel radio controls. It was not flashy, but it whispered refinement. Space was generous too, with the trunk ready for luggage on those long weekend trips. And here's the fun twist. The Riviera was one of the last true personal luxury coupes from an American brand. No more big two-door Buicks after this, making the 1997 Riviera a farewell salute to an entire era. Number 7, Oldsmobile Aurora, 1995. Next up comes the car that shocked everyone in the mid-90s, the 1995 Oldsmobile Aurora. This was not your grandpa's Olds with wire wheels and opera lamps. The styling alone was enough to make people pause. The nose stretched forward with tiny grille slots that looked more like art than air vents. The headlights were narrow and sharp, the sides pinched like a Coke bottle, and the back end wore lights shaped like fighter jet burners. Park this car next to anything from Germany or Japan, and it did not shrink away. It looked bold, confident, and futuristic all at once. Now, what made the Aurora legendary was more than looks. Underneath that clean body sat a chassis that engineers bragged was as solid as a Mercedes-Benz of the time. That meant the car stayed tight, no rattles, no squeaks, and it felt like a brick even at high speeds. For Oldsmobile, a brand people thought was fading, this was proof they still had fight left. The heart of the Aurora was something truly special. Instead of a V6 or a mild motor, it came with a 244 cubic inch V8 engine that was born from the Cadillac Northstar family. With 250 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque, it was smooth, refined, and strong. Even better, it could limp home on just 4 cylinders if something went wrong, a trick almost no one else had back then. Sliding over from the engine to the way it drove, the Aurora brought something many did not expect. With independent suspension at all 4 corners and big disc brakes on each wheel, it handled like a proper sports sedan. The steering used magnets and electronics to give light effort at low speeds and firm weight on the highway. Sure, it was not razor sharp like a BMW, but for a big American sedan, it was a serious surprise. Comfort was never sacrificed, though. The cabin felt like a true luxury lounge, with wide leather seats that hugged you on long trips, wood trim that added class, and even a steering wheel packed with controls for radio and climate. The dashboard curved around the driver, with every button angled right where you needed it. Add in dual-zone climate control, a powerful stereo, and space for 5 full-sized adults, and you had a car that could cruise across states without breaking a sweat. One detail that often gets overlooked is how advanced the safety and tech list was for the time. Anti-lock brakes, traction control, dual airbags, remote keyless entry, and even a travel computer came standard. This was the mid-90s, yet Aurora made it feel like the future had already arrived. Number 6. Cadillac Eldorado Touring Coupe, 1992. If Aurora was rewriting the luxury playbook, along came a Cadillac that carried its own crown, the 1992 Eldorado Touring Coupe. What struck people first was the look. Cadillac narrowed the face, made the grille sharper, and gave the headlights a more serious stare, almost as if the car was daring the road to challenge it. Down low, the extra air intake with matching fog lamps kept it purposeful, not just pretty. Swing to the side and you saw a body with a long front overhang and a windshield. So raked it felt like a sports tourer. The rear glass slid down neatly into wide pillars, a nod to the past but with a very modern finish. Even the tail was trimmed with vertical lights that gave it a signature glow at night, something neighbors could spot from a block away. Now, styling might catch the eyes, but the real secret sat in the cabin. Cadillac threw out the old square dashboard and replaced it with curves, wood trim, and technology that looked like it belonged in the future. Right in front of the driver sat large gauges for speed and revs, flanked by digital readouts that gave everything from fuel use to outside temperature. That was big news in the early 90s. And those front bucket seats, they hugged you enough to keep you in place during spirited driving, but still cushioned you for hours on the highway. Even passengers in the back got their own comfortable bench with a folding armrest, making long rides a breeze. Slide your attention downward, and the Touring Coupe revealed more of its tricks. Beneath that elegant body was a chassis fitted with a suspension system that could change its personality with the press of a button. You wanted it soft for cruising? Done. You needed it firmer for sharper corners? Also done. Cadillac engineers made sure this car could dance when it needed to, something few expected from a brand known mostly for comfort. And powering all of this grace was a 300 cubic inch V8 engine that delivered 200 horsepower and 275 pound-feet of torque. Smooth, confident, and ready to cover miles without breaking a sweat, it paired with a 4-speed automatic that sent all that energy to the front wheels. Later years even brought the legendary Northstar motor, but the Touring Coupe already proved that Cadillac could build a machine ready to spar with rivals across the ocean. Number 5. Plymouth Prowler, 1997. And just as the Eldorado left people nodding at Cadillac's comeback, along rolled one of the wildest creations of the decade, the 1997 Plymouth Prowler. This was the car that looked like it had driven straight out of a comic book sketch, yet somehow you could buy it from a showroom. Start with the shape, because that is what made jaws drop first. long pointed nose sticking out like a sword, open wheels up front like an Indy racer, and a body painted in purple metallic so bright it could make sunglasses sweat. No one mistook it for anything else on the road, and that was exactly the point. The design team wanted a modern hot rod that carried the spirit of the 1930s, but with the tools of the 90s. Mission accomplished. The body was not just flashy, it was built from aluminum panels, glued and bonded in ways usually seen on race cars. The hood, doors, trunk, even the frame itself, all used lightweight alloy to keep the weight down to under 3,000 pounds. That made the Prowler nimble, more like a sports coupe than a boulevard cruiser. You could say it had the diet plan of a gymnast and the outfit of a rock star. Once you dropped into the cockpit, the story shifted again. Borrowed switches from other Chrysler models gave it everyday comfort, but the wild touches stood out. A tachometer sat perched separately, like it was watching over you. The gauges clustered in the center, and the dash color matched the wild paint outside. The seats came wrapped in leather with good bolstering. The steering wheel had stereo controls, and features like power windows, keyless entry, and even dual airbags made it a car you could live with, not just admire at car shows. Now, the powertrain was where debates sparked, because under that dramatic nose was not a V8, but a 213 cubic inch V6. In 1997, it made 214 horsepower, and a later version boosted it to 253. Numbers aside, the car's lightweight meant it sprinted quick enough to keep smiles wide. The 4-speed auto-stick transmission let you slap through gears manually, holding revs all the way to the red line if you felt playful. It was not a fire-breathing dragster, but it delivered fun with a personality bigger than its cylinder count. Handling was equally surprising. With the transmission mounted at the rear, weight was balanced front to back like a proper sports machine. Independent suspension and fat rear tires meant the car gripped hard through corners, even if drivers had to watch that low front snout from kissing curbs. And once the top folded down neatly into the trunk, the Prowler turned every street into a parade route. Number 4, Lincoln Mark VIII LSC, 1993. Next up, Lincoln brought out a machine that looked formal but had the heart of an athlete, the 1997 Lincoln Mark VIII LSC. This was the final chapter in the Mark series, a two-door that combined size, power, and flair like few others. The Mark VIII was massive, stretching more than 17 feet long, with a wheelbase of 113 inches. Yet for all its presence, it didn't move like a heavyweight. Thanks to smart engineering, it carried itself with surprising agility, blending grand luxury with unexpected speed. Its biggest highlight lived under the hood. A 280 cubic inch V8 with 32 valves and double overhead cams delivered 280 horsepower, enough to push the car from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 7 seconds. That was remarkable for a car this large, giving it both the calmness of a cruiser and the punch of a sports machine. But Lincoln didn't stop at raw power. The LSC featured computer-controlled air suspension at all 4 corners. At highway speeds, the system automatically lowered the car by nearly 1 inch, improving both stability and style. It was a clever touch that separated it from rivals like Cadillac and Lexus. The design was equally bold. It wore sharp front lines with some of the smallest headlights in the industry, a Thunderbird-inspired roofline, and the trademark spare tire hump on the trunk lid, a nod to tradition that kept the Mark's identity alive. Inside, the car leaned into futuristic ideas, a cockpit-style dash wrapped around the driver with gauges spread in a sweeping arc, dual airbags, electronic climate control, and a driver information center added modern tech, while leather seats and power features reminded you it was still a Lincoln. Even the steering showed sophistication. At low speeds, it stayed light and easy, but on the open road, it grew sharper and more responsive. Combine that with strong brakes and alloy wheels, and this 17-foot luxury coupe could corner with surprising confidence. It was Lincoln's last great two-door, proving that comfort and performance could live together in one legendary 90s oldtimer. Number 3, Chrysler 300 1999. From here, the story took another wild turn with the 1999 Chrysler 300M. This was not a copy of the old 300 cars from the 50s, but rather a fresh hero, built to carry the famous badge into a brand new century. Now, let's talk about how it looked, because that was the first punch it threw. The nose came forward strong with quad halogen lamps, tucked into sculpted bezels. The roofline swept in one smooth arc, and the rear carried tail lamps stretched wide like red jewels across a clean deck. Designers even admitted they borrowed ideas from Italian cars, and it shows. From any angle, it stood out in traffic like a pro athlete walking into a classroom full of math nerds. Of course, the powertrain was ready to back up those looks. Under that long hood sat a 213 cubic inch V6 engine with 24 valves, pushing out 253 horsepower at high revs. Torque came in at 255 pound-feet, giving the car the strength to hit 60 miles per hour in under 8 seconds. For a sedan that weighed more than 3,500 pounds, that meant passing and climbing hills felt almost effortless. But performance was not only about raw numbers. Chrysler paired the engine with a 4-speed automatic transmission that came with auto stick mode. That little trick let drivers tap the lever left or right to shift gears themselves, holding power through corners or downshifting before a climb. It gave a taste of manual fun without the daily workout of a clutch pedal. Moving from drivetrain to dynamics, the handling proved just as impressive. A rigid steel body, rubber-isolated cradle, and fully independent suspension gave the 300M a ride, both sharp and smooth. And when equipped with the Performance Handling Group, it carved slalom cones nearly as quickly as cars that wore 2 doors and carried racing reputations. Finally, space was never sacrificed. With over 121 cubic feet of cabin volume and a wide rear seat, 5 adults could stretch with ease. Add in clever folding seats and a roomy trunk, and suddenly the sports sedan doubled as a family hauler with no excuses. Number 2, Chevrolet Corvette ZR1, 1990. The 1990 Corvette ZR1, the car that earned the nickname King of the Hill. This was the American two-seater that went head-to-head with Ferrari and showed the world that Detroit could play in the big leagues. Let's start with what gave it that crown. Under the long hood lived a 350 cubic inch V8 engine built with help from Lotus and Mercury Marine. It carried 32 valves, 4 camshafts, and a wild redline that made drivers grin like kids in a candy shop. The numbers were jaw-dropping: 375 horsepower and 370 pound-feet of torque. That kind of muscle meant 0 to 60 miles per hour in 4.5 seconds and a top speed of 175 miles per hour. For the early 90s, that was supercar territory. Now, swing your attention to the way it put that power down. A 6-speed manual transmission designed by ZF was bolted to the back, smooth and precise, yet strong enough to handle every ounce of torque. Drivers loved it because shifting felt natural, whether crawling through traffic or tearing across mountain roads. The ZR1 didn't just move fast, it stayed glued to the road. Wide Goodyear Eagle tires, 11 inches at the back, gave it a footprint like a linebacker planted on the turf. Adjustable shocks let drivers choose between touring, sport, and performance, changing the ride from comfortable highway cruiser to corner carving weapon at the flick of a switch. Pair that with massive 13-inch disc brakes and fade-free stopping, and suddenly this Corvette felt as confident slowing down as it did speeding up. And the look? At first glance, it resembled a normal Corvette, but the body was actually 3 inches wider in the rear to cover those monster tires. Subtle, but car fans noticed. The quad taillights, flared hips, and rumbling soundtrack made it clear that this was no ordinary Vette. Number 1. Ford Taurus SHO, 1996. Finally, here comes a car that wore a business suit but secretly packed track day firepower. The Ford Taurus SHO from 1996. Sliding into the heart of what made it special, the engine was no ordinary lump of metal. This was a 207 cubic inch V8, tuned with help from Yamaha, and it had a special trick. It purred like a calm cat when cruising, but gave a snarl when pushed. That balance of quiet manners and surprising muscle made it feel far more premium than its family sedan shell suggested. But the magic was not only in sound. The way this car moved set it apart. With an automatic transmission that shifted smoother than a magician's card trick, the SHO could jump from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 8 seconds flat. It kept pulling through the quarter-mile in about 16 seconds. Numbers that put it nose to nose with respected imports of its day. Adding to the legend, its suspension was a curious mix. Over smooth highways, it floated with grace, keeping body roll low and comfort high. Yet hit an abrupt bump and it let you know, sometimes a little too firmly. The steering and handling deserve their own spotlight. Instead of tugging and fighting like the earlier models, this SHO delivered precision. It stayed calm through corners, tracked straight on rough surfaces, and never let torque steal the show. Even under hard throttle, it only nudged slightly before correcting itself. Proof that Ford was chasing maturity without losing all the fun. And when you settled into the cabin, it was clear this was no longer just a sports sedan. It was aiming at the luxury crowd. Sculpted panels, clear switches, and generous space gave the feel of something more upscale, even if the oval shapes and Art Deco touches stirred debate. These 90s legends deserve to be remembered, and maybe even celebrated again on the road. Drop a comment, hit like, and don't forget to subscribe for more classics.